Welcome to Herself Reclaimed. I'm Jennifer Soames, an integrative health and capacity coach, helping women rebuild their energy and capacity so they can make effective decisions, set strong boundaries, and have sustainable success in both business and in life. Today, I am joined by Daniela Sivertsen. Let me share a bit about her, and then we'll get into our conversation. Daniela spent 25 years building a career in finance leadership across the US, Luxembourg, and Denmark. She walked away from it convinced that she hated the job. It took her time to realize that that wasn't true. She just hated what it cost her. Now she works with women in senior leadership through a practice she calls personal sustainability, helping them sustain success without losing themselves in the process. She is based in Copenhagen and works with clients globally. Let me bring Daniela in here. Welcome, Daniela. It is so wonderful to have you here today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I love what you're building here, having such real conversations with women. So I'm excited for our conversation.
Thank you. Me too. And as you know, and in case you are new to the channel, preventing burnout is the focus of my work with women entrepreneurs. And many in our audience want to avoid sliding down that slippery slope. And similar to you, Daniela, I had a different career before going into coaching, instigated by changes in my own health. You spent years in finance before transitioning into the executive coaching work that you do now with senior women. What were the earliest signals, physically and or emotionally, that your body was asking for something different?
Well, I have to admit that the signals were there long before I actually acted on them, like probably with many women. I didn't notice, I didn't realize that I had to act on anything. I was, by all external means, I felt like I was succeeding. I was getting promoted. I was going to better jobs and ultimately becoming a CFO, which is the pinnacle of any finance career. So I thought everything is great until it really wasn't. I remember a Sunday night looking at my calendar for the coming week just to prepare a bit. And instead of feeling energized and excited for things that were coming up, I was feeling really empty and exhausted even before the week started. And I remember turning to my husband saying, I don't think I can do this for the next 20 years. And that was the beginning of me starting to realize maybe this is not for me. And I convinced myself slowly that maybe this isn't for me. This is not the job that I thought it would be. So that's when I thought I need to leave here.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I can so relate to that in my own way.
Mm.
And so just recognizing like those signs of when you look at your calendar and you go like there's this automatic just oh like there's this
Yes.
contraction in the body, there's this deflation, there's this sense of heaviness when you look at your calendar. And even though it's full, right? Like because you attained like what is the main goal of like being a CFO, like in this
Yes.
financial advising role. And yet, like you looked at everything you had to do coming up, and it was just like, oh, too heavy.
Yes.
And
Yeah, and
I
not
know,
exciting. It felt not exciting. Like this, I'm supposed to be excited about what I'm doing. And I felt like, okay, that's not how I'm feeling right now.
yeah,
Mm.
that lack of excitement was a big kind of wake up call for you.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I can remember back when my chronic fatigue syndrome was really becoming a thing for me.
Mm.
And I had built the bodywork practice that I had literally dreamed of, and it was really successful. And I was booked out for 6 weeks at a time, having great client experiences. And yet, looking at my calendar, seeing how booked I was, and then going like, similarly, like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. Like, I can't
Yeah.
physically do this. And
Yes.
so whether it's a physical health condition or it's just that kind of emotional like that weight, having that sense of dread, essentially, even when things are going on paper like so perfect, is a
Yeah.
really, really important sign to pay attention to.
Right. Right. Yes, it is. You're right. You're right. You know firsthand.
And so a lot of high achieving women recognize these kinds of signals, but they keep pushing anyway. What made it impossible for you to continue operating in the same way?
For me, it was realizing the what being successful was actually costing me. I was going through massive emotional and physiological changes at the time, and I didn't know what to do. I just felt like, okay, I need to do more. Isn't that typical also of women who think I'm not doing enough, I'm not feeling great about it because I need to do more and I don't understand it and I need to work harder. So I kept pushing myself, and it backfired because I came to a point where I thought I'm losing too much of myself, and I have to choose between my career and my health, myself. So of course I chose myself, and I left my career. And I did, it took me a while, as I mentioned earlier, to realize that it's not about choosing. I think women really want to do everything perfectly. So you really, give everything to everything, right? So you give all of yourself to everything, and something has to give. And then you realize, you think you failed at something, and instead of thinking, okay, I'm not saying that you need to give up on standards or lower your standards by any way, but understanding how the biology works, how your body is working, what is changing in your body. I was 50 years old at the time, and a lot of changes are happening at that time. So understanding that and knowing that you don't have to choose, then I think that was the most important lesson that I took from there.
You don't have to choose. So,
No.
ladies, like listening, rewind that, listen to that again, because Daniela just shared positive, like pure gold there. You don't have to choose between your health, your career, like, and I think you made a
Yes.
really good point, Daniela. Like, when things were starting to shift for you in a not so positive way, and then you felt like, I have to do more because then I must be inadequate in some way.
Right, right, right. You blame yourself because, okay, maybe this job, I'm not cut out for it, or I didn't have enough experience, or I need to take a course, or I need to learn X, Y, and Z. So you really push yourself without really stopping to think what's happening. Of course I'm capable. Of course I know what I'm doing, but things are happening in your body that you haven't felt before. And so understanding what's happening is a huge step in being able to work with it. Because I think if women, or anybody for that matter, if anybody learns to understand what's happening inside, and learning to work with it and manage the energy and the capacity, then you're able to do much more than you thought you were. And that's a huge lesson that I learned and I want to share. That's basically the basis of, or the foundation of how I work with women.
That
Mm.
is so powerful because in order to understand what's happening, you have to just pause and slow down. Like you have to
Yes.
take things slower and to really develop that awareness in your own body, in your own mind, the things around you. But it's like you have to slow down. And most entrepreneurial women and professional women, most women in general, aren't always very good at slowing down. Or at least
We
I
don't
can
know
speak for
how to
myself.
sleep.
I can speak for myself. I have not been good at slowing down until I was forced to. And
Yes.
so that's a really strong point that I like to make is like you have a choice. You can
Yes.
choose to slow down. Don't wait until something like your health, like in my case, forces you to be sidelined. And not just temporarily, but like for years,
Right.
right? So
Right.
you have the choice make a good choice, make good
Yes.
choices.
Yes. You know the saying that the body is whispering, so listen to the whispers before it starts to scream at you, right? Because then I'm not going to say it's too late, but then you could have started on a different path a long time ago. So those whispers are very important. Mhm.
Absolutely. Listen to those whispers. And Danielle, you
Yes.
mentioned that, as you were at the end of that career, like what it was that it was costing you. What specifically was all of that costing you?
For me, it was costing my health. I started to feel more physically ill, anxiety, changes in my gut, in my stomach, in my digestion, migraines. I've always suffered from migraines since I was a teenager, really, but now they were more powerful and more frequent. Things that I chalked up to stress, really, in the beginning. I said, oh, it's because I'm working so hard. And exhaustion. So to the point where I was 100% focused on succeeding in this role that I have fought so hard to achieve. Um, I gave up a lot of things. So as I mentioned, nutrition and being physical and being healthy, being with my family, that connection is a super important part of being healthy. And I gave all that up and I tried to put all my focus into this role because, again, like a lot of women that I talk to, you always think, well, once I get to X, then things will be better, right? When you're young, you're like, oh, well, I'm going to work really hard. And once I get this promotion, I'll slow down because then I'll have a team and the team will work and I'll have time to slow down. That never happens, right? Then you say, oh, once I have kids, then I'll slow down. So I'll work really hard until then, and then my life is going to slow down. That never happens because it just piles on, right? You never let go, you never slow down. And I felt like that was happening. I said, okay, once I really get a hold of this role and I really have done as the best that I can, then I'll slow down. But it never happens. And I thought, I'm killing myself over this. I'm not feeling well mentally or physically. And of course, as I mentioned, all the hormonal changes happening that I didn't understand at the time because 5 or 6 years ago, you didn't talk about those changes at the water cooler like now. It's very like the menopause word is all over the place, but at the time nobody talked about anything. So again, you didn't really say much or know as much as you do today. So all of that made me think, okay, I need to then choose myself, and that's what I did.
So you were really putting everything into this role as a CFO role, this dream that you had accomplished, that you had fulfilled, and yet it was at the expense of pretty much everything else, your health, your relationships, your family, because you thought, when I get to this, like when I achieve this, then I will do it. And as we know, like logically, it's like there is only now. There is only this present moment. And again, we have a choice of like we can choose to do differently now so that in the future we can actually have the things that we want. But it's if we put off, oh, I'll just do it, I'll do it later. I'll sleep later. Like I'll sleep in 5 years when the kids are
Exactly.
older. Like,
Exactly.
how often does
Exactly.
that work out for people, really?
Never. And you wake up one day, you realize, oh my goodness, you can't get that time back. You can't get the youth back or your the same energy you had at 35 years old, right? So it's unfortunate. And I'm trying to speak to women of all ages or anybody who listens really to say, start now. I always say health is like investing. If you start with small steps and you're consistent with things, then at the end of the day, you reap the rewards and you don't have to rush to do anything because a lot of times it's too late. So, so take those steps now and start working towards it little by little. So just to be consistent.
Be consistent with those small steps. And that in my health coaching experience, going through this process with Duke, has been really what has been a game changer for people is just you don't have to make like big changes. So whether it's in your career, whether it's in your health, like all those things get intertwined, but you don't have to do these massive overhauls. And I think we see that so much in social media, in magazines, all the
Yes.
things, right? New Year's resolutions. And like we know that those things don't work. And yet how many times do people still do them? And then it's Einstein's definition of insanity, right? Like doing the
Yes.
same
Yeah.
thing over and over again and expecting different results. And so it
Right.
is just like take that step back, chunk
Mhm.
it down into smaller bite-sized pieces so that you can actually have the wins and the changes that you actually want to see in your life.
Yes, yeah, because that's a big part of it, right? Is the reward. It's motivating to say, okay, I did this, I did 15 minutes of walking, or I did X amount of lifting, or I ate a small salad today. Just small things. You don't have to do everything at once because that will really burn you out as well, trying to do everything at the same time. And then you'll get too tired of it and then abandon it before you actually see any results.
And that
Mm.
sustainability is what's so important for both of our work is to help our
Right.
clients really have sustainable change and sustainable success that carries through for the rest of their lives, ideally. I know that's what we
Right.
both want for our clients.
Absolutely, absolutely. Not just during the coaching program, right? Because it's easy to keep that up for 2, 3, 4 weeks, but it's how do you work it into your life so that you keep it up forever and that you enjoy it. You don't see it as a chore, like, oh, you have to do it. You actually enjoy it because you can see the benefits that it's giving you.
Absolutely. You can see it and it's meaningful to you so that you want to keep doing it.
Right, right, right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, one of the things when I think back to our first conversation quite some time ago, uh, one of the things that I loved learning about you was how worldly you are and your just your life of living in different places. You've
Mhm.
lived and worked across several countries and cultures. How has being a minority in different environments shaped your understanding of identity, resilience, and health?
Well, yes, as you know, I was born in Argentina and I grew up in the US. My parents emigrated when I was 2 years old. So I grew up in the US and I studied abroad in France for a year. And then I moved to Luxembourg for 5. And then currently I live in Denmark for the last 20 years. So I always considered myself a foreigner, really. And the more I advanced in my career, I found myself many times to be the only woman at the table in a finance career. So I felt like I was always a foreigner, a minority, and it teaches you a lot about identity. It teaches you about adapting to the different environments, the different cultures, the way things are done in different places, having to prove yourself all the time, and also consistently rebuilding your credibility everywhere you go. And that takes a lot of energy and also comes with a cost, I felt. But what I learned was that resilience is not about just sucking it up and accepting the cost and saying, well, that's just what it is. For me, resilience is about understanding and noticing what it is costing you so that you can make a good decision as to where you're going to take it. How much are you going to give? And that's what it's taught me, that you need to, yes, you need to adapt and you need to accept where you are and be part of it, but you don't need to lose yourself in the process. And I think a lot of people try to just blend in somewhere and they end up losing a lot of themselves. I realized that it's more of a mosaic, right? You end up being more of a mosaic and you take a little bit of different pieces that helps shape you and helps define who you are and your values and what you're willing to work towards. So that's super important for me. It's a little bit confusing when people say, "Where are you from?" Because it's like, well, it's a long story. It's not just one answer, but it's interesting, and I think I'm richer for it because of all the experiences.
You definitely bring a unique perspective to your life, to the world, to your work. And I totally agree that women in general, but I've had a lot of conversations with women who are immigrants, and knowing that they have had to work harder to prove
Mm,
themselves, and especially in male-dominated industries. I've spoken with a lot of people in the AI fields, change management, things like that, and especially being women, and also for them, like women of color, so adding more layers of
mm.
challenge in our world, that yeah, like they've had to prove themselves more and more to be taken seriously. And so that resilience of knowing like I don't have to lose myself to try to show that I know my stuff and that I can
Yes.
serve and do the job that I'm supposed to do. That idea of the mosaic of, like, I see it in my mind of this like mosaic like of yourself, but built up with all these different little pieces of those that life experience, professionally, personally, all those things that you have learned from living in different places and interacting with different people, that it just adds more color into that picture of you, and it completes you in a really unique way.
Yes, that's right. That's right. But it takes time. I would say growing up as an immigrant in the US also, it was ingrained in me that you have to work hard. You have to work harder than everybody else because we're not from here. So I grew up thinking I have to work more and harder, and that shapes everything you do, and I kind of took that everywhere I went, trying to work harder and work harder. And you fast forward to the Sunday evening when I'm looking at my calendar, I realized my whole life I've been working harder, working harder. That's the only way I knew how to solve problems. So it takes a while to understand that it's not about working harder. So everything shapes who you become, and it's just important to understand where a lot of these things come from. I think I went through a long time period where I was trying to understand, why do I feel this way and why do I think this way, and again, the identity that is basically molding you everywhere you go. Some of it is great, and some of it you can easily shed and leave behind.
It all comes back to really that awareness of like slowing down, looking at those thoughts and going like, where does this come from? Is this true? Like that's a question that I
Right.
ask myself
Absolutely.
from time to time
Yes.
is this true? And then I go, no.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's not true. Okay, so what am I going to do differently? And we can
Right.
look at societal conditioning, familial conditioning, and sadly, like they still shape our reality for some, especially
Yes.
for people who don't have, you know, a lot of privilege. And yet, like we can, like you said, we can choose to shed those things and to really step into, like, no, this is who I am. This is what I know I bring to the table. This is my value. This is my worth. And like, here I am. I'm
Yes.
showing up as me,
Right.
and that you don't
Right.
have to burn yourself out to compromise your health, to compromise your relationships, to compromise who you are for the sake of
Right.
success. You can have all of it. It might just look a little differently than maybe what you have been conditioned to believe it looks like.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And things don't ever end up, right? When you're young and you have a dream in your mind, you already have a picture of what that looks like. And it doesn't mean that it has to look that way. You can still be happy and be successful and achieve everything you want, just to be open-minded and accept what you're achieving. Yeah.
Absolutely. Accept what you are achieving and like celebrate that. It doesn't have
Right.
to always be huge
Exactly.
things. Like celebrate the successes that you do have on any given day, whether they're small, big, somewhere in between.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yes.
Well, talking a little bit more about your work with senior women in corporate environments, what do you see most often that is misunderstood or overlooked?
Um, I would say the funny enough, it's more of an invisible struggle because we women were tough. We perform well, we get results, we multitask, and we never complain, right? So from the outside, everything looks great. Oh, there's nothing wrong here, but the exhaustion is real, and the disconnection that eventually comes is also real. And the doubt that you have at the end of the day when you think, okay, is this really what I worked so hard for? That's also real. So, so I would say that it's a lot of times also people think, okay, when something is happening and there's a dip in the performance, right? Because women are expected to work through all of those doubts and those fears and everything, but and all the changes that are happening in their lives. And when there's a dip in performance, especially at the age, let's say 50s or so, people immediately think, okay, well, she's just tired, or oh, she must not be capable, or she's losing her edge, or maybe she's not ambitious anymore and she doesn't really care. So I think that's sad because it's not a matter of performance at all. I think it's an invisible struggle that women have because inside, on the outside, of course, they're successful and everything is going well, but on the inside, they're suffering and it's they're really not doing well. And I think it's all due to, of course, these biological changes that are not talked about so easily in the workplace. So for me, it's that invisible struggle that happens inside of a woman at a certain phase in her life.
And I know all too well that just because you can't see something on the outside does not mean that it is not real. It very much is
Right,
real. And that's
right,
what some people
right.
just don't understand, whether it's like for me with traumatic brain injury that nobody could see, or with
Mm,
its changes in hormones. I'm honestly not even in perimenopause yet, but at the same time, I've dealt with hormonal challenges for a long time. And so it's
yes,
like I know what it's like to not get good sleep, to have night sweats, to, uh, like all the things that can come with that. So like I get to go through it like multiple times. Yay me. Um,
lucky you, lucky
I
you.
know. And yet like, that's one thing that I think, you know, men don't understand is like how much this impacts women. And it's not by choice. Like if you see that dip in performance, like you said, it's not because they're losing their edge. It's like because she's got brain fog and she can't think and she was up at 2 in the morning with night sweats and she couldn't get back to sleep and like she has added anxiety, which wasn't there before her hormones shifted. And it's like there's all these
Yes,
things that happen that affect every aspect of our lives, including our work, but that doesn't mean that we're not
right, right.
capable, doesn't mean that we're not motivated and driven and that we can't get things done. It just means we need to give ourselves grace and other people need
Yes,
to give us grace and support too.
right.
It's not about like,
Absolutely.
oh, you're less than because oh yeah, you're getting older, you're to that age. It's like, can you just freaking support me? Like help me. Don't like belittle me because
Yes,
this freaking sucks. Help me, support me, like lift me up, make my life better. Don't drag me down.
right. Don't punish me for something, right? Don't punish me for something that I didn't choose.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And speaking of those midlife transitions, they and menopause are largely, like you mentioned, like invisible in business culture. It's not
Yes.
so much being talked about at the water cooler. What do you wish women in organizations understood earlier about how this phase affects cognition, energy, and decision making? A little bit of what we alluded to just a
Yes,
minute ago.
yes. Yes. Oh, the M word. So, of course, menopause conversations are. are not very present in the boardroom or in leadership or anything like that. So I feel a lot of times that people just don't want to talk about it. They think, oh, it's private, and we don't want to allude to it at all, which makes it even more uncomfortable for the woman going through that, right? So it's a fact that hormonal shifts affect your cognitive abilities, your energy, your judgment, a lot of things. And women, as I mentioned, they are expected to perform through all of that. So, what I wish organizations would understand is that it's not a wellness strategy. So, okay, well, give her a couple of days off and she'll be fine, or it's not a wellness strategy, it's a retention strategy, because at that age, at that phase in life, these women have so much experience, so much, they have accomplished so much, they are great with the team, they're great in the business, and it's a shame to have to lose women, and there has been a large percentage of women that are leaving the workplace at that age because it's just they're not supported by it and they're not understood, and that's there's no room for women like this. And it's really clear that the system has to change around this. But my focus is not changing the system. What am focusing on, and I would love to focus on, is helping women not get consumed by it or not get depleted by all of this as they wait for the system to change, because who knows when that's going to change. And it all starts again, as we mentioned earlier, is just paying attention and understanding what your body is going through, because a lot of times you, as I mentioned earlier, also you seem very successful on the outside, but something is off. You've reached what you've worked so hard for, but something is off, and that's in no performance review conversation, or there's not a box to tick in a wellness survey that you just feel off. So it's very difficult to explain that, to explain how, yes, you've reached everything you wanted, but okay, you're still not happy. Something is wrong. So we need to have those conversations, and we need to make the space for that, in being understood. And it starts with understanding yourself and what is happening in this time period.
Understanding yourself first and foremost, and then if you're an employer, so like some of you ladies listening, you may have employees and teams that you're working with, and some of them might be women who are in this phase. And so even if you're not there yet, it's still important for you to be mindful of noticing how these women may be going through some changes. And it is really about, as Daniela said, the retention, because yeah, there's so much wisdom, so much experience, right? There's a reason why when we move into this phase of life, right, it's kind of that old crone
Yes.
archetype, because they are incredibly wise. They are incredibly experienced in life and what they do. And they're like, you don't want that to go away. That is
No.
so valuable. And yet there could be some shifts and some changes that can be made to just support these women to retain them, because they will have so much more to offer. And you don't want them leaving the workforce
No.
when they've still got so much more that they can
Right.
contribute.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
We've talked a little bit about women looking really good on paper and like in your own experience, and yet it can also be internally depleting and disconnecting. If a woman finds herself in that place, like what is one meaningful thing that she can do that doesn't involve doing more or think of like fixing herself? Because she's not ultimately broken.
No, no, and I hate that expression. I hate the expression of being broken because it's not the case at all. I think definitely not more action, because that was the mistake that I made and that many women make when things are not going as you expect. Then you think, okay, I got to do more. I've got to kill myself and work harder, and that's definitely not it. Because in order to understand what's happening and to notice and become aware, you need some kind of stillness as well. You need to, and we mentioned it before, that pause is magical. The pause of just stopping for a moment and realizing what is happening, and really feeling somatically, feeling in your body what is happening to me. Not the feeling of success, not the feeling of driving your new Mercedes, or the feeling of having a great luxury holiday. The feeling that a woman gets at the end of the day when her head hits the pillow and she's thinking about what happened that day, what happened that week, what's coming up tomorrow, what's coming up the next week. How does that feel? And I love to ask the question, is the life that you're building the life that you want? Is it the life that you want to continue? And that was my Sunday night moment where I was like, I don't want to do this for the next 20 years. I cannot imagine this. So I love that question to all the women, because it really hits you and it makes you think. A lot of times you think, oh, I'm not going to do this forever. But when you think back, okay, how long have you been pushing yourself? How long have you not prioritized yourself? How long have you not done anything for yourself? And then it really hits you. It's like, okay, that's longer than I thought. So just stopping and saying, okay, what is happening? What am I feeling is priceless. And for me, that's the beginning of a personal sustainability practice, as I mentioned to you earlier in our other conversation, I believe, where it's basically the ability to consistently show up and perform at your best without losing yourself. And it's not a one way street, like, okay, now you've arrived and here you are. It's a constant, it's a cycle of constantly understanding how you're feeling, how you're doing, what you're claiming, what you want to own, what you want to work towards, and then how you're going to sustain that. So my framework is basically three phases. The first one being notice, as we talked very much about. The second one being claim. So what are you claiming? What are you, say it out loud. This is what I want. This is how it's going to be. And this is what I'm going to work towards. And the third phase is sustain. So, how do you make it work for you? Because you can make it work through the coaching program, maybe a month or two or six ahead of time. But how do you make it fit into your everyday life? And your life is different from my life, from everybody's life. We have different kids, we have different jobs, we have different needs, different ambitions. So it's the kind of program that is very individual to everybody, and it's working. Okay, how do I make it fit? How do I make it fit in my mornings or my evenings? And what do I have to do to take these small steps so that I feel like I'm claiming the life that I want, and I'm living it the way I want to live it. And that is super powerful when you understand that you actually can do that. A lot of women think, oh, that's the circumstance of where I am. I have to work these 12 hours a day. And coming from a finance world, I can tell you that there are months in the year where you do end up working 12 hours a day. When you need to release that that annual report, and you need to close the quarters, and you need to do things. There are times when you need to put in those hours. But the important thing is that cycle, that it's not all the time. I mean, because when you get used to it, then you keep moving your baseline, and you keep saying, well, this is what I've always done, so this is what I always have to do. But you need to get in the habit of really looking at it in cycles and saying, yes, I have 3 months where I really have to work a lot and kill myself, but when this is over, I'm taking some time off. I'm restoring my energy. I'm taking care of myself. And during those 3 months, there's also time to do small things to build up your energy so that you're not depleting it consistently. And when you get to March 31st, then you're completely depleted. So I think understanding all of this and making room for it in your everyday, I think is priceless for somebody to continue on a healthy road.
Oh, I could not agree more. And I love your framework for helping these women in corporate positions and to help them navigate those times where they are working really hard, long days, but then it is complementing that with the things that you can do in those times, as well as what do you do after those to nourish and to replenish yourself, because you can't keep going at that pace. We all know that.
No.
And yet people try and it doesn't work. And then they end up leaving and being sick and all the things that we don't want. And
Yes,
so I
exactly.
love how for both of our work, it really is about helping clients get really clear on their vision of what they want. And so, like you said, like sometimes just speaking that is the first time they've ever even voiced it, let alone sometimes even thought about what is it that I actually really want, and to create that picture in your mind and then take meaningful bite-sized chunks of action to actually make that happen. Because ultimately, what I know we both want for our clients is that alignment, that of what they envision and like what their reality is. And your reality doesn't necessarily have to be this like far-fetched idea that is only there when the circumstances are right. It's like, no, you can actually create your reality. You have
Absolutely.
to be very discerning in your choices, but like it is possible. And both you and I have ways to help our clients do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so rewarding when you start talking to somebody and they're like, well, I'm never going to be able to, and I always have to work 12, and I always, and I never, and those using those words already tells you a lot, right? So I love the discussions that come out of that, and I love afterwards saying, okay, well, it worked and I'm feeling better, and it doesn't have to work 100% of the time, but if you can realize that the majority of the time you're keeping up with everything and it's working and you're advancing and you're feeling like you want to feel, then it's a win. Absolutely.
I love that point of if you're feeling the way you want to feel.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's like we have agency in how we think, how we feel, and how we act, and we can choose how we feel. Like it really is a choice, and that
It
doesn't
is.
mean that we don't feel pain around things or grief around things. We feel all of the things because we're human, but it's
Right.
making the choice to stay in that frame of mind and to think a certain way, like, oh, I'm only going to get that when, or saying, I'm going to get it and I'm going to do what I can and I'm going to have this mindset. It takes practice and it takes effort to change that. Trust
Absolutely.
me, like having spent the better part of a year rewiring my brain, I know it takes effort and time. And it's possible because I wouldn't be here doing this if I hadn't put that work in.
Yes.
So, like,
And I
ladies,
love
it
that
is
story
possible.
about you. I love that story about you with, your whole rewiring of everything. It takes a lot of effort. So just knowing from where you came, or I should say that where you started, which was really high up, and then going all the way down, and then having to really crawl up again slowly but surely, and then look at you now. I think it's amazing. I think it really is, where you are today and the work that you've did.
Yeah, thank you. And you know it firsthand too, just your own experience of rising to the top of being a CFO and then going like, I can't do this anymore, similarly, right? And then having to rebuild and to rebuild a different career using all the skills that you do have, but then adding new ones to start coaching and often a new trajectory. So we make these pivots and it is a lot of effort. And yet, like listeners, Daniela and I are proof that you can make changes even when it can feel like you're at rock bottom. And trust me, like for me, I was like, I got nothing to lose. I'm at rock bottom. Um,
Right, right.
and there are ways to climb out of it. And having somebody on your team, on your side, who can be your partner in the process to help you, empower you to climb out yourself, and just somebody to give you some tools and tips and tricks and things like that to help you is just invaluable. It's priceless.
Yes.
So
Absolutely. And asking the hard questions, right? That sometimes we're so afraid to ask ourselves. When we know the answer already. I feel like a lot of times when I get some hard questions, I know the answer already, which is why I think they're hard questions. But it's funny that how powerful it is to be able to receive those and to work with it. So I think that's also incredibly helpful on a journey for any person.
absolutely. Well, as we come into our last couple of questions, these are ones that everybody gets asked.
Okay.
So, Daniela, what is one practice or mindset that helps you stay grounded when things feel uncertain or overwhelming?
Ooh, for me, this is going to sound very cliche, and probably everybody says the same thing. I don't know, but this silence, this slowing down, and the breathing part for me, and ideally out in nature. Living in Denmark, I've learned to love being outdoors and nature and walking in the forest. That's very typical Scandinavian, is to you've been inside all day, you've been in meetings and stressed, take a walk in the forest, because nobody ever lives far from a forest anywhere you are. So it's easy to say. um, for me, that's super important, to have that time and that stillness and the quiet. I've been all my life, I've been a stress ball. I've stressed all the time about everything. I've always been anxious. I've always done things fast, eating fast and everything fast. And lately, I've really learned to slow down and to take time with things and to appreciate things. So, and the deep breathing, the pauses that I have, it really helps me regulate. Okay, how am I feeling? We started out before the recording with some deep breaths to just kind of center where we are. I love it because it really, we had, for the audience out there, technical issues, and so I was like, oh my God, on my side. And I thought, oh no, and I was getting really stressed. And so finally, when was able to dial in on my phone, we said, okay, let's just, Jennifer said, let's just take some deep breaths to get centered. And it worked, just 3 breaths. And you said, okay, now that's over. Yes, I was stressed for a few seconds. Now it's over, and I'm over it. And now I'm going to appreciate this lovely conversation that we're going to have. So for me, that's very important. Is this time to understand? And like any finance person, I love data. So understanding what that data is telling me, what my energy is saying, and what my body is saying, and learning how to read those signals. You could only do that when you take that pause and that time for yourself.
Mm.
That's priceless for me, that practice.
You can only get the data when you actually slow down and pay attention. Yeah.
And listen for it, right? Because you don't listen to anything when you're stressed out and running around like a chicken with your head cut off. So so it's just slowing down and letting things just whisper to you.
Hmm. La-
Mm.
I love that. And yes, being in the Pacific Northwest here, I similarly have lots of lovely trees nearby. And yes, being out in nature is so powerful. And,
Yes.
even if people don't live in a suburban or more rural area, thankfully there are parks, there's green spaces, even just a single tree or even greenery in your space can just have such a positive effect. So,
Yes.
yeah, love that practice of yours. And then
Mhm.
lastly, what is your biggest takeaway from our conversation today?
Well, I love that we have so many see similarities in the way that we approach health and helping women, and our past. I think you struggled a lot with your health, and I would say for me it was more in the later phase. I don't know that I would compare my struggle to yours. I think you're amazing, as I mentioned before. Um, but we know what it's like to have to be in a place that we don't like, right? And we both had the resilience to say, okay, this is what I have to do and this is what I need to do. And I think it's also very powerful to be able to help others with that, because somebody asked me a while ago, if you knew what you knew now, do you think you would still be a CFO? Because I think in my intro, I also wrote to you that I came to a point where I hated my job and I thought this is not for me. And that's not the case. Obviously, as our conversation now, everybody has heard, it wasn't the job at all, actually. It was the way I was handling it. It was my lack of tools for understanding how to work with what was happening to me physically and emotionally. So I don't think it really had anything to do with the job. And I think if I would have known then what I know now, I definitely think I would have been a better CFO for sure, because I would have been more able to handle more in the capacity and what I was, how I was developing. But I'm really proud of being able to work with women now and to talk to people about health and about energy and about identity and all of the things that have affected me and that have made me happier. And I find it that it's a privilege to be able to talk to others about it. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here and talk a little bit about my experience and also my recommendations, if you will, on certain things, because now it's very pulling to want to help others and talk to others about it. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing your nuggets of wisdom with us and for doing this work because it is so needed in the world. And I think if I have to choose a single takeaway, which is challenging because there were many, I would choose the importance of slowing down and pausing
Mhm.
and to really pay attention to our bodies and to our breath and to just really be embodied and to really pay attention to the signals that our bodies are giving us, whether it's around our careers, our jobs, around our health, but just to take those moments to slow down, to pause,
Mm.
and to breathe. Because, like you said, we don't see or hear anything when there's too much noise around us, when we get too stressed, like a chicken with
Yes,
its head cut off. Like we're not going to absorb anything, and then we run around panicked, and our nervous systems are all over the place, and we can't be responsive. We are simply reactive. So
right.
taking those moments to pause is critical and essential to
Yes,
our health and well-being.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. Well said.
Well, thank you again so much, Daniela. It was a joy to have you here today. And
Thank
if you'd like to
you.
follow Daniela or explore her work, just know that her links and info are in the description. So be sure to reach out to her with questions, to connect, and to find out more about her work. Daniela, I'm going to take you out here. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
I
It was a real pleasure. Thank you, Jennifer.
thank you. And for those of you listening at home, if something resonated with you, something clicked for you or opened up for you, be sure to subscribe and stay connected for more conversations that support your leadership, your energy, and your capacity. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.